the Bitcoin Group, the American original. For over the last 10 years, the sharpest Satoshis, the best Bitcoins, the hardest cryptocurrency talk. We'd like to welcome our panelists, Dan Eve, the Crypto Raptor.
Happy Friday, people.
Daniel Kari from Understanding Crypto, the book.
Hey, everybody.
Josh Shigala from the Standard.io.
Happy Saturday from where I am.
And I'm Thomas Hunt from the World Crypto Network. Moving on to issue one. Issue one, German police seize $2.1 billion worth of Bitcoin in piracy sting. According to the early information on the website, the money was originally stolen or used in a pirated video type website situation. The profits from that video website were put into Bitcoin. Dan Eve, what do you think about the seizure of $2.1 billion?
Well, it's another huge seizure, right? From operations that were using dark markets in some way, right? These are piracy markets. So the profits were then put into Bitcoin because the pirates were very clever, of course, and knew that Bitcoin was just going to do its thing. It's probably what the biggest is it this the biggest seizure by any country in Europe, Bitcoin seizure? I think it's in the billions. It's got to be there, right? We're probably going to see
it dwarfs the Silk Road that was only now 600 or 240 million. This is 2 billion, so it's 10 times bigger than the Silk Road.
But what was the Silk Road Bitcoin worth now, though, right? Because surely is that today's prices would be pretty insane for Silk Road, I'm sure.
I was told there would be no math.
Well, it was like, I mean, it was like 40 million that it got sold for. Some of it got sold to Tim Draper in like 2017, and that was when Bitcoin was about $1,000. So it must be like 40 times four. I don't know. It's a huge amount, right? It's a lot. 1.6 billion. It's got to be now. But anyway, that's a huge seizure, especially from Europe. We're not used to kind of those seizures really, because a lot of them you tend to hear they come from the US, like Bitfinex, Silk Road, etc. There was obviously the Russians behind the hack for, was it Cripsy that got caught, but I think again that was by the US authorities, so that was a US type seizure. But we're going to be hearing about plenty of these as time goes on, and as much as we say that Bitcoin is unconfiscatable, they can still bend your arm until you willingly give them the private keys, right? Which is what happened here with the German police. So it may be unconfiscatable to a certain extent, and it may be anonymous to a certain extent, but they still can find you, and they still can pry the Bitcoins from your hands.
That's definitely true. And while everyone talks a big talk in Bitcoin, it always ends up like the scene in Untouchables, where they write on the wall in blood, touchable. Daniel Carey, what do you think about the seizure of $2.1 billion?
Yeah, I checked out this article, and this looks like this piracy stuff was going on like 10 years ago. So like 10 years ago, people were still saying Bitcoin is anonymous, right? That's what people were using Silk Road for. And it's the authorities catching up to all of this stuff that's happened over the last 10 years. I know a lot of people that work in these blockchain analytics companies, and there's just like huge demand from law enforcement and governments everywhere, because ironically, the whole advent of crypto and Bitcoin was for sort of freedom and something outside of governments. The irony is now governments are like making money from this, like seizing it. The Silk Road example is, it was a 2014 auction where Tim Draper bought a bunch of them. He didn't say how much he paid for them, but it was like it was definitely less than $1,000 for those. What will be interesting is like there's obviously going to be a follow-up to this story about who's going to buy these at auction. That's 50,000 Bitcoin. Is somebody just going to come in and take all that? Is that like going to be a Michael Saylor sort of situation? It'll be interesting to find out. But the story's not over there.
The rules are you have to buy them all at once, so it has to be a single person. So they're limiting this auction to say like Elon Musk or Michael Jordan, someone like that.
Yeah. Well, I don't know why you said Michael Jordan. I didn't know he was like in the market, but like Yeah, so there's only like a few people on the planet that are going to buy this, right? And I can't think of a big publicly traded company in Europe that would do this. It's really like the Teslas or the MicroStrategies or the Square, now known as Block. Like I feel like it would be a big company that would do this, or a huge investor. But 50,000, that's just a lot, you know. It's just that's a lot of money.
It's actually even more money than a sports team. But still, Josh Shigala, it's the shoes. Be like Mike. There's always hope, right?
There is always hope. Man, like someone sent through this, like not this particular article, but the topic of this article a little like a few days ago to me, and I, I could have sworn there was something more nefarious about it. Wasn't just a file sharing, because I mean, who pays for file sharing? I don't understand. I think that
The early articles do seem incredibly weak. Like I tried to read two or three of
yeah,
them, and I was looking for that meat. Like I wanted to understand the story better. I don't think
yeah.
they know at this point. I think obviously the feds know, the government knows, but I don't think we know, and we're going to learn more, right? Daniel, have
There's
you heard anything on
there's
this?
well, there's a case ongoing, right? There's clearly, to my understanding, there hasn't been a prosecution, right?
Yeah,
So the
there's not
details
even
of all
been
that are
a
probably sealed.
charge. The guy
Yeah,
just
it's all
sent
probably
the
sealed
fed.
for now.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. And I mean, if if people are making films and earning this much money, um, I don't see how like piracy is free. Like people pirate because they don't want to pay for the streaming service, so they generally don't want to pay for that. So it could be some very sick stuff that people, with that sort of proclivity want to pay for. But yeah, so yeah, the story is still ongoing. I can't really say much more apart from the thing that government seize funds without sort of knowing much about it. They did the same thing with the oligarchs from Russia. They just sort of create a tag and then say, right, this is ours now. They just seize stuff. They just seize stuff. and like, some of these so-called oligarchs, we know nothing about them. These are just people that, yeah, maybe they got them with ill-gotten gains, but come on, we have some sort of like system in place to go through and charge people and confiscate and put them in prison or whatever. You can't just go around the world just seizing stuff because people are wealthy. So I don't know. Like, I want to see, I want to see more sort of steps towards. I want to see more proper steps towards charging someone before they just take someone's money. I feel that's heading towards a pretty dark place in society.
I think unfortunately we just need more information on this. We're probably going to find out that he was butchering and murdering the cats in Daniel's background. And then we're going to be all in arms and upset because in general though, we need to know what they're selling. If they're making
Yeah,
$2.1 billion on selling videos, I need to know what kind of videos they are, even if it's
yeah,
horrible like Rosemary's Baby or something.
yeah.
So that question's still out there. We're going to continue following this story and we're going to try to keep up with it when more information is available. But let's move on to the exit question. The pirates were clearly following the old code. They were using pseudo anonymous, what they thought was anonymous Bitcoin. But the real question is, will we see more giant seizures like this in the future? Or will pirates take advantage of things like Monero, Zcash, and other privacy currencies? Dan, Eve, is the future of private piracy on Bitcoin?
Well, we'll see the old or lots of old thefts popping up, but I think you're right that there's going to be a lot of criminals that will be using swapping services, and will be a lot harder to trace than just having taken accepted Bitcoin and then using Bitcoin to transact. They'll probably be swapping here, there, and everywhere. But we'll definitely be hearing a lot more about the old seizures that are happening and the police finally catching up.
And I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves here, but if you watch the CNBC Roselcon video that we link below, I think the future is these flow charts charting everyone's money, saying that it went here and it went there and it got big and it got small, this exchange, that exchange. It's a complicated web, but it seems like the investigators seem to catch him every time, or catch him on the other end buying things at Walmart. Daniel, what do you think? Are they going to keep using Bitcoin in the future?
Well, I remember it's actually been about 10 years since like this wide usage of what's called clustering has been happening with Bitcoin. And that's just where you can kind of cluster entities and you can see what's an exchange, what's a wallet, where's it going there. So that part of it, the regulators and the cops have gotten ahead of. Another thing that's been done is to try to clamp down on the mixers, right? The stuff that's just kind of swirling, particularly Bitcoin around. So I'm starting to wonder if like there will be more usage of like privacy type of coins like Monero. A lot of people don't. I believe it's something like 95% of Zcash transactions are not shielded anyway because people don't even know how to use it that way. But Monero in particular, like that seems like one where I have heard that there are ways to track it, but it's a lot harder. So it's just like this cat and mouse game that's just going to continue, right? Like the cops are going to get ahead of like they got into clustering and all that, and now they're clamping down on the mixing. I've heard some things about people can trace things with Monero, but it's very difficult. Like there'll be something else that comes along that, it's just a whack-a-mole game. And it's just like the last thing we were talking about. Like it's just a storyline to follow.
I do love the idea that it'll just be something generic like privacy coin or secure coin, and it won't actually be secure. It'll just say so. And again, these poor
Doesn't that already
hackers.
exist?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm just
it's
naming
called
things at this
Telegram. It's
point.
called
But
Telegram.
yeah, Telegram coin. But at this point, these poor hackers just don't know what to do. All these unprivate coins, and like Daniel was saying, no mixers, no cocktails. Drink it straight. Josh, is Bitcoin privacy the new crisis? Has everyone forgotten scaling, and it's nothing but libertarian tears?
Well, the thing is that obviously no one wants hardcore criminals around. Nobody likes, apart from the people that are actually purchasing from these criminals or whatever. But yeah, in a civilized society, we don't want sickos trading sick stuff and getting away with it. But by clamping down on the thing that sickos as well as normal people use, all you do is build a tighter and tighter net around the normal people until the sickos take over government, and then you have the sickos in control of everybody, or the bullies at least. And so it's important to remember that when you have a currency that is free, like cash, that's sort of, it's also pseudonymous. Like you've got these serial numbers that can be traced, but it's anonymous in the point of contact. And so moving forward, Bitcoin still does have that same promise, and it is hard. And in a court of law as well, you have to be beyond a shadow of a doubt. And so some of these mixes and things, they do cause the shadow of doubt to enter the story. And so it is, I think, a lot harder to lock someone into a guilty if they don't, just confess themselves. But just tracing the money, I think it's lazy police work. Tracing money has always been a good way to solve crimes. Obviously, follow the money, we all know it, but it shouldn't be the only way. We shouldn't create money so we can follow the money on everything. We should create money because it's good money. It's an easy way to transact. It creates wealth and prosperity, because the more wealth and prosperity we have, the bigger the middle class. The bigger the middle class, the less crime. And that's where we want to get to.
I do think the police were lucky in this case, Josh. They said that one of the people who had the money had just given it back to them. They had sent the coins to the police, so they don't have to, I don't know, get their key out of them some other way. But it's another lesson, like the MP3. Bitcoin might be more trackable money, at least for now. Moving on to the next topic, issue 2. Issue 2, bruised by the stock market. The Chinese rush into banned Bitcoin. Yes, that's right. The Chinese are back again. And despite being banned, the Chinese crypto market recorded an estimated $86.4 billion in transaction volume between July 2022 and 2023, dwarfing Hong Kong, which only had $64 billion in crypto trading. Chain analysis also reckons that the developments have created speculation that the Chinese government may be warning to cryptocurrency and that Hong Kong may be a testing ground for these efforts. As predicted on this show, the Chinese did continue buying Bitcoin despite it being banned. Daniel Carey, what do you think about the Chinese getting rid of the stock market and getting into Bitcoin?
Yeah, so I actually spent some time living in China, 2006, 2007, and I remember when I was there, people that I was working with, I was working on a startup, they were investing in the stock market there, and it was like it was going like before, this was before crypto, right? But it was crazy, and I remember saying to these people, I was like this doesn't seem like a real stock market. And they're like, oh, we're well aware of this. We're well aware that this is just like the way our stocks work. And the problem you have with like publicly traded companies in the Shanghai market, the Shenzhen market, is like there always seems to be like some funky accounting going on with these companies. And so why not just invest in crypto? I mean, this has been going on. It's just like, to hear this story now. I mean, I remember this story back in 2013, 2014, right? There was a bunch of Chinese exchanges popped up. I can't, like OKCoin and BTCC, like, and then that all got shut down. Bitcoin mining used to be almost exclusively in China. That got shut down. I think the Chinese want to have other financial options and opportunities, and they'd like to get some of their money maybe out of the mainland into other places. And it seems like Hong Kong is that test ground. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that there's some banking services in Hong Kong now that are enabling crypto, or maybe enabling crypto exchanges. I can't remember, but now that the mainland sort of owns Hong Kong, it's still sort of like this fertile testing ground. And Hong Kong has always been known as a financial center outside of Japan. The funny thing now is, like, with the mainland kind of co-opting Hong Kong, what do they do for a financial center now? And maybe crypto is what that'll be.
It's interesting. We've always heard that China has a gambler culture, and to see that go into their stock market and have stocks more like Plinko, where it's a random ball moving around, less info, more random chaos, like a slot machine where you could just win $1 million because of an accounting error on a stock or something. That does sound kind of fun, gotta admit. But let's go to Josh Shigala. What do you think about China getting back into Bitcoin, as of course we and everyone else on the show predicted?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, the Chinese are, there's a saying that China is large and the emperor lives far away, and so, or is vast, I should say, and the emperor is far away. There's, currency controls have been a thing, right? You aren't allowed to just buy some US dollar or have capital flight, but there's whole districts that are basically there to facilitate capital flight. You just need to know where they are, and they'll sort it out for you. You can get money out, and it's the same with buying crypto. It never really went, but you can go and buy crypto. It's not mainstream, but there's whole districts where you can go and change your money for other currencies, and you're able to open bank accounts that are off the mainland, so internationally. I think even the article stated that, and buy crypto. But yeah, it's only a matter of time. I mean, you can't ban math. Like, it's just a matter of time. And Chinese are good at getting past all the firewalls and seeing stuff if they want. Obviously, it's about reading in English might be hard, but you've got automated translators now. Like it's more, you know, Bitcoin wasn't designed to be legal, so to speak. Like it was designed to be what it is, and people will get it if they want it. Obviously, when in the early days, you had to jump through 1,000 hoops to get Bitcoin. You had to open a Dwala account and buy Second Life credits, and then swap those Second Life credits to something else. So, people jump through hoops if they want this stuff, and they'll get it. No worries.
I haven't
And
heard
that's
that
all.
word walla in forever.
Yeah, right.
That's a blast from the past.
Then you'll have to go
There
answer
you go.
the red
There
money
you go.
phone or get on Moneyline or something like that. But
Yeah.
I do agree, Josh, that the Chinese will get Bitcoin if they want it. That's always what we've said here. If there's demand for something, even if a government bans it, even if they have the great firewall or the greatest firewall, people seem to find a way around it. Dan, Eve, what do you think about China getting into cryptocurrency despite the ban?
Well, I think that's only going to continue, especially as the property market's in turmoil, right? The Evergrande thing just keeps on going on. There's I was only reading today about the number of developments that are just completely abandoned. There's that giant Paris city, the miniature Paris, which is all completely abandoned. So whereas hedging with property was a really good thing, a logical thing back in the past when it was booming. It's not such a great idea now, and quite a lot of the wealth in China is tied up in property markets. And if that's starting to hit really bad, as well as the stock market, then there's only one other asset class really to look to for stability outside of just China, right? Something that isn't tied to China specifically in the success of either Evergrande, the property market, or stocks within China. So it seems pretty sensible, and as we said, they're quite a technologically advanced nation. They're very used to having to scoot around issues and VPNs in order to be able to get to random social media sites and any other content that's banned by the government. So it makes sense that they would be also quite clued up on how to get around actually buying Bitcoin. What's strange about that is even the article says that if it says mining and trading is banned, but it also says that OKX and Binance are still operating. So what do you do on OKX and Binance if you're not trading? Maybe it's just futures.
You're just an observer, or you can play with fantasy Bitcoin. And you can just track what your wins and losses would have been if you'd invested. Just a fun game. Yeah.
Here's what you could have had, right? But it's always been a cat and mouse game with China, and actually I remember, Daniel, as you were saying about the what was it? OK Coin was the exchange, wasn't it? I actually remember watching a presentation.
So I remember OK Coin, and then there was BTC China, which then became BTCC, and that was Lee.
It's like who boy or who buy, something like that as well.
Schwab. Those were the three that were big. But I also remember Bobby Lee, who's Charlie Lee's brother, who started BTC China. He would go to conferences in the US and talk about how much market manipulation was going on with these exchanges.
Yeah.
And that they just didn't, they just had to kind of go with the flow on all that, right? Like that's just kind of like the way that they were operating.
Yeah.
Well, and he's similar to Jack Ma, where at one point they were on top of the world. They were beloved businessmen in China. Then China decided to ban Bitcoin and get rid of them. And now I think they're just, back to being normal citizens again, not quite the stars that they once were.
There wasn't a lot of talk about what happened to, it was BTC China, and then it was BTCC. And then it just kind of went away because like, if the government doesn't want you doing it, and you're called BTC China, what exactly is your business? I know Bobby now has like a Bitcoin wallet company called Ballet. It's like a very thin wallet. So he's done fine. He's probably wanted to be out of that spotlight for a long time anyway. So
Yeah, because didn't we interview Bobby Lee about the wallets? They were like, and he was talking about, because he went into how the one factory produces the private keys and another factory produces the actual hardware, and how he was going into detail about how they separate them so that they won't ever have the private key for these kind of paper type wallets. I think there was even like, I think I've even got a card upstairs or something like that from that. But yeah, but I remember watching for OKCoin. I remember watching a presentation at Coin Scrum in London in like, I don't know, 2017. And yeah, there was OKCoin. It was just as China had banned and unbanned and banned and banned and unbanned again. And the guy was like, "Well, I don't really know what I'm going to say, in this presentation, because China's just banned us again." So, so the presentation is probably going to change.
Out of the three, out of Huobi, BTC China, and OKCoin, OKCoin still exists actually. They're just known as OKX. I know they have offices in Silicon Valley. I know they're popular with like altcoin trading.
Mm.
They're still a viable business, and they have an office like in Menlo Park or something. So I think they've done well with probably just being outside of the Chinese market, maybe the Southeast Asian market, maybe South America. So of the three, there was one that actually did do okay. They changed their name to OKX now that I remember.
Hmm.
I do
And
think at
let's not
first
forget
that
Binance too, in a way.
That came in 2017. That came way later, but that was like the second
Yeah.
wave
Mm.
before I think they tried to ban it again or whatever, because they did kick Binance out of the country or whatever, or at least like they
Yeah.
left offices and
it
stuff.
felt like the story with BTCC also, like they left, they were going to go to Hong Kong. They kind of were going to keep operating in China. And then I think somebody said no to that. And as you say, Daniel, I think it completely disappeared. I don't know if it turned into another exchange or became something or whatever happened.
This
But yeah.
this China to Hong Kong to somewhere else, like this is what wasn't FTX based in Hong Kong too, and then they had to go to
Mm.
the Bahamas. Like this is just seems like a common thread for crypto companies. I mean, not completely similar, but I do remember now FTX was also in Hong Kong. BitMEX was also in Hong Kong, right? So like there's been a lot of activity in Hong Kong. Um, I don't know if I'd want to go start a crypto company there, because it feels like the rules and things are undulating. You just don't know where the future is gonna be, and that's really hard as a business owner to try to run something
Yeah.
without knowing what the future is gonna be.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and Josh, you know how bad it is to try to get bank accounts. Imagine switching countries multiple times and going from country to country like some of these companies have.
Yeah, it's a complete nightmare. And this is where stablecoins came from. This is why stablecoins were invented, well, USDTs in particular, because exchanges just kept on getting their bank accounts stolen. Or shut down, I should say, and sometimes stolen. So it was just much easier to say, look, here, if you want to have a hedge on the US dollar, here's one that's pegged to it, and which also centralized a lot of that problem to tether, which was also difficult. But yeah, running an exchange has been the hardest thing in the world. Like it's already hard to have a startup, let alone run a freaking crypto exchange. It's a complete nightmare.
Well, and as it says in the article, the Chinese stock market may be down around 40%. Facebook stock, they call it Meta now, was up 20% just today. But they tell me that stocks aren't volatile. Stocks are safe. But you all know the true source of knowledge, the Bitcoin Magic 8 Ball, the predictor
Yeah.
of predictors. And now the panel will face off against the ball. Dan, Eve, will the price of Bitcoin be higher or lower this time next week?
Higher.
Daniel, Carey, higher or lower?
I'm gonna be a contrarian and say lower.
Josh Agala, higher or lower?
I've drawn some Pythagoras theorems and some triangles and some lines, and they all state higher. So I'm just going to go higher.
It's 2-1. It's going to take a lot of charts, but now we'll shake the ball, which you know could cause bubbles. Will the price of Bitcoin be higher this time next week? It is certain. It is certain,
Ooh.
says the ball. One of the most certain predictions that the ball can make. Moving on, check out worldcryptonetwork.com, where we just celebrated our 10th anniversary from February 1st, 2014 until February 1st, 2024. Check out the whole video. And let's stop for a minute here. Just panelists, when's the first time, think back in your memories, when's the first time that you heard about the World Crypto Network or the first show that you watched? Dan Eve, World Crypto Network memories.
It was 2013, and I was like looking for podcasts, and I found the Trace Mayer one, Run to Gold, which he turned into the Bitcoin one, and then was looking for something on YouTube to watch. And I remember, watching Mad Bitcoins on there, and I was like, I was watching it with in two minds, because I was like, this is the most amazing, incredible like invention ever. This is so cool, and I'm like, but how can I point if I want point someone towards a YouTube resource? Like, are they going to take me seriously when I point them towards Mad Bitcoins, informing them about Bitcoin? And it did. It's used because it sticks in people's minds. They're watching. They're like, oh yeah, I remember that, man. I remember the guy, the crazy hat, the psychedelic backgrounds. So yeah, it's probably late 2013, I think, was the first time I watched. So just over 10 years ago.
Very cool. Daniel Carey, when's the first time you heard about the World Crypto Network?
I definitely heard it from you in person at a meetup. I don't remember, like.
See, that's word of mouth advertising right there. Might have even given you a sticker.
You might have given me a sticker. I remember that you interviewed me with your top hat and glasses about Zapchain in 2015 at one of Brock Pierce's conferences. I can't remember which one it was called, like Coin Summit or Cointacular or something. I remember you interviewing me though. And we just used to hang out. We used to go, you used to do the social in the Mission. So, but all of those, like, I can't remember because there were so many times that we actually used to hang out in person back in Silicon Valley before the pandemic, before everybody just, now it's like a totally different place. Like, it's not the same anymore. It's all just AI.
All the good old days. We used to have the San Francisco Bitcoin meetup and the drink up, and we would hang out at the El Rio in the Mission District.
In the back, in the back. Everybody would come to that, man. Like,
it was huge, man. Back in the day. Good times, good times. Josh Shigala, what do you remember about the World Crypto Network? We found a video yesterday of you talking about Vaultoro. You look so young. Victoria couldn't believe it.
Yeah, man, we've been around. It would have been like 2013 or something. I don't know, but yeah, Mad Bitcoins. There was a couple of it was. I remember turning to, because there wasn't that much content back in the day. You try to fight. You could pretty much keep up with all the news and all the and seeing Mad Bitcoins there. That was always interesting. And I remember I'd watched like this silver guy who was right into silver, and he would say, "Man, this Mad Bitcoins, he's actually a very intelligent guy." I remember thinking, "Yeah, he is." Yeah. Anyway, very good, and congratulations. This show is the longest running, and we don't say it enough. It's the longest running Bitcoin show in the world. It's been going continuously for over 10 years. And congratulations, Thomas, for being there on a weekly. It's fantastic to see, and I think we should definitely give homage to more of that aspect, that this has been so long running, because most people, there's this whole thing called pod fade, where people just get over doing it, or they get they get too wealthy, or they get too bored, or they get too busy, or life happens. And but no, Thomas Hunt, you've carried us through, and continued building, and thanks to people that support us in the chat there. Obviously, we have the regulars, Proper Goal and Gurgirl and stuff. So thank you to everybody, and thank you. It's an honor to be here on a weekly, and fantastic.
Aw, thanks, Josh, for the kind words. It's been great to keep this going and to keep it going for the comments and the chat and all the people. And it's been a really fun 10 years. I also wanted to say shout out to Max Hillebrand, I forgot to mention him yesterday. He really carried the network for a while there, did a lot of content, and it's been fun keeping this up. But we've got to move on back to the issues. Issue 3. FTX expects to fully repay customers, but won't restart the defunct crypto exchange. Initially, their FTT token surged but then the news turned negative and it plummeted 15%. Of course, they're paying you back at the level of Bitcoin at $2,000 or $20,000 a Bitcoin, not the current 40,000 levels. Josh Shigala, what do you think? FTX isn't such a crisis anymore.
Well, yeah, I mean, these sorts of articles really annoy me because they don't get into the details. The fact is that this is just US customers. So again, US-centric stuff. Bitcoin is a global currency. There's people around the world, it's particularly like Singapore, for instance, their government body endorsed FTX to, and so this investment arm of the Singaporean government invested people's money. Like, so many people lost money in this thing that aren't getting any of this stuff back. Plus, yeah, they're getting it at the price, the US dollar. That's not Bitcoin. They're not getting paid in full. If they're getting paid in full, it'd be like Mt. Gox, where no, they're not even, sorry, they're not getting paid in full, but they're getting the Bitcoin 20% of whatever what's his face found behind the couch. We really want to see a little bit more preciseness in the language used here. US customers only, sold at a certain amount, and you're not getting paid back. Plus, look at this crazy market, man. FTT token still trading. BitConnect still bloody trading, I think. Like, this is the weird thing with cryptos. Some of these strange tickers keep on living. At least when on the stock exchange, when a company goes down, their ticker goes down as well. It's just not seen anymore. It's funny to see like FTT is still like people are clinging on. Terra Luna still clinging on to Hopium. But yeah, I don't know. Like there's certain things with that have been tried in this space which I find fascinating, and it's on that lever of experimentation. So when who was it? Bitfinex, when they got hacked and then they released a token. Was it Bitfinex? Yeah. And they released a token, and then people bought the token as like an IOU, and then the price collapsed, and then the exchange bought the IOU back at pennies on the dollar and said, "Oh, look, it's I don't know, it's just market forces." Like, you didn't have to sell it back to them, but people did. And anyway, I thought that was more like a fascinating way of dealing with a hack. Although, FTX wasn't a hack, it was outright fraud. But fascinating. Well, let's see. And this year should be the year that us Mt. Goxers should be getting something back. We'll see if at the last minute the wallet doesn't get hacked, or the guy accidentally fat thumbs it to his own wallet and says, "Whoops, I didn't mean to," or whatever. I don't know what will happen.
You're just gonna get one of those waving cats, or maybe the leg lamp from A Christmas Story. You're gonna be opening up and you're like, "Oh, it's my refund from Mt. Gox." Oh no, it's a box of chopsticks.
Yeah, that's
You're getting nothing.
I know.
But I do think this exchange again is a lesson for everyone. If you store your coins in exchange, they control your coins, and if they decide to give you it back at 20,000 a coin, or 10,000, or 30,000, or they just couldn't make it that month, like Josh said, and they give you this weird Bitfinex token, it's at your own risk when you store coins on an exchange. So that's why a lot of people have Trezors and ledgers and hardware wallets. Dan, Eve, what do you think? FTX is going to repay everybody? This is just fine, right? Everything's fine.
Well, I think as Josh says, is it everyone, or is it just the US customers, right? Are they just going to, pilfer the funds that affected all these people worldwide that lost money? And is it just going to go to the US customers? It's good that they're not doing a token and they're able to give the money back. But again, as Josh pointed out, it's going to be in a fiat value that's probably very different to the point where it went, right. It went under. If you look at the FTX token right now on CoinMarketCap, it says the FTX bankruptcy proceedings are underway. The FTT token no longer has any use and may be liquidated by the estate to pay creditors. Proceed with caution. But it's still got like, I don't know, 30-40 million dollars of trading on the exchanges. And if you look at the order books, it's not just like selling. People are they're actually buying it. And that's the crazy thing about crypto. Again, as Josh pointed out, the fact that the ticker just disappears, right? But the tokens can be traded forever on dexes. And you think about like the liquidity pool can stay there because someone, for example, bought a bunch of liquidity pool tokens for FTX and fiat or Ethereum or whatever, and lost their private key or lost the control of the wallet, and you've got this eternal liquidity pool, and people thinking the token's still there. And I still see it with random tokens that I shouldn't have got into in like 2017, and you kind of go back to check on them and go, Dentacoin. Well, I didn't get into Dentacoin, but one of the funny ones, right? Is Dentacoin. Like, is that still about? And yes, for some reason, there's still places where you can buy Dentacoin. It's still being traded, and you're like, what the hell is going on, man? Like, crypto really is immutable. It's eternal.
Well, FTT becomes a meme coin. That's the meme is FTX. Sam Altman's hair. Sam, not Altman. Sam Bankman-Fried's hair.
Yeah, but it's crazy that these people are allowed to keep on buying these coins, right? Not knowing that Dentacoin, whatever, is a dead token because it's still there. There's no way of kind of, or at least there's not an easy way of being able to determine whether the coin's completely dead. And there's a lot of projects as well. Not just from FTX's side, but a lot of general projects from like crypto in the early days, even the earliest ones of like 2013, where you still got a community around stuff like Feathercoin. They just won't let go. They won't let go of these old tokens. And some of them also I've seen they basically they have a social media presence, even though the team is defunct and not doing anything. Just because they can just eke out a few more pennies from people that randomly buy the coin, thinking, bag holders that think it's gone down to almost nothing now. If I buy some, buy some more, I'm and it goes up, I'll eventually win. So all these poor people buying these defunct tokens, it's very sad.
I love this idea because it's almost ironic and fun, like an art project, like let's adopt an old dead coin. But then it gets sad because people start putting their money in it. But what Josh said also reminded me, maybe we should pitch this idea to the stock market. Maybe it's not too late for other dead companies like Enron to come back and have a dead cat bounce, making some investors rich, others investors lose all their money. It's like a wheel of fortune. It really is a gambling market. We could get some Schadenfreude going. Daniel Kari, what do you think about the FTX disaster now that all the money's being returned and there's no more disaster?
Yeah, and I'm glad we really have talked about FTT here because we need to go back and talk a little bit about, it's like FTT is never going to die. And I don't know if you guys remember this, but when Sam was running FTX and he wanted to acquire a company or he wanted to make a deal, what was the crux of the deal? It was FTT, right? What caused the collapse of FTX is when Ian Allison showed the balance sheet from CoinDesk. He reported on the balance sheet. What was it full of? FTT, right? So Sam was kind of, it's interesting because, yeah, now maybe FTT, it doesn't sound like it's dead. It does sound a little bit like it's a meme coin. But prior to the meme coin status, Sam was using this like he thought it was like dollars, right? He was using this as his leverage that he created out of thin air. And I remember there was like this quote about him saying, I can't remember the description that he used with the media, but it made everything sound like a Ponzi scheme, right? And that's because that's what it was. He created FTT. He leveraged his own brand to use FTT to acquire other things. And then we figure out, oh, now everybody's going to get refunded. I mean, I don't know where they found all this extra change, but and I don't know how much the estate owns of FTT, but it's interesting about how I have always wanted to write like a long op-ed or something for my Substack about this idea of dead cryptocurrencies, because they don't ever seem to actually die. They just go through these cycles that we're still so new into this. Like something like FTT can have sort of this, it can morph into different things. It's not dead. It's a meme. But before that, it was like people were accepting it like it was real money. So this whole story, like as soon as you sent this to me, Tom, I was like, the whole story here is actually FTT, because FTX is going to die, and we're probably not going to hear much from Sam anymore. But FTT will live on. Like, I don't know what's something that has like lasted forever that we can't get rid of in society. Like, there's got to be another example of this. But cryptocurrencies don't go anywhere. You create them, but then they don't ever get destroyed.
It might not be the best example because it's physical, but when I was in Vienna, they have these things called flak towers that the Nazis had built, and they're large cement towers, and they're very thick, and they were to have people evacuate in, put guns on, have radar, that kind of thing. And now in modern times, they can't get rid of them because they're just too thick and they're just too heavy. And if we blew it up, all the concrete would go everywhere. And one of them has been reconditioned into an aquarium, and the other ones are just kind of monuments, and they're just big, heavy towers that can't be removed.
It's sort of like power lines. We really should bury all power lines just for safety and all that. But because of the way things were 120 years ago, at least in the United States, all the power lines aren't underground. You go to China, they're all underground because they planned around all that, right? Like, so there's interesting aspects of our society technologically that it's like we can't get rid of a dial tone. We don't really need a dial tone, but we still have it, right?
Still use toilet paper, like paper.
Yeah, what's up with that?
B-Days. What B-Days, right?
South Park said we should all switch to B days. So, but it is
It-
interesting,
it's
these
sort of like
structures.
this-
These
it's this
structures
idea
that stay around, these coins that are dead that stay alive. I remember when Mt. Gox was collapsing at first, people were selling Gox coins. And there was a weird way, if you had coins in your account, you could flip them and then get these Gox coins on the outside and then sell those. And the speculators were hoping they would get the coins back from bankruptcy or be able to leverage it. I'm not sure what happened in the end
Yeah,
of that.
it
Bitcoin
was
Builder
supposed
or
to be an
something.
arb play. I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And with these
Yeah.
new ones, the ARB play actually comes out when they print their own token like Bitfinex. But it's not looking too bad. Maybe they could even get a meme going here. Just paint this guy green, put him on the cover of these coins, and suddenly FTX is a meme coin. Moving on to the exit question. No harm, no foul. Everybody gets paid back. Let's just let Sam out of jail. Josh Segala, should we forgive Sam Bankman-Fried?
Well, I think this is what the article set up. Maybe some of the large donation receivers are like, I don't know, sort of pushing these sorts of narratives because it does seem very US centric, like we mentioned, and that's where he's going to prison. That's where the courts are happening. And it might be a way that in the background, the heavyweights that are surrounded by and Sam and trying to help him out are trying to shift the narrative to everyone's getting paid back at the $20,000 range and in full, so seems a bit strange. Yeah.
Dan Eve, no harm, no foul. Everybody's paid back.
Well, I mean, he did line a lot of pockets, right? So how much can he get away with? Is he going to be bailed out? I don't know. It seems like on the surface of it, compared to other crimes, like we often compare it to the like Theranos. Is it Theranos? That and she's getting what 9 years or something. And so if you compare it to the scale of that, you'd imagine, and the intent behind it as well. I mean, it's very clear that he didn't know what he was doing from the start, or at least he knew that he was doing wrong from the start. So, he'd be getting a much harsher sentence. But yeah, I think a lot of pockets have been lined, and I don't know. I think you're right. The article kind of alludes to the fact that, well, he's kind of, they're getting money back, so all's not too bad, right?
Daniel Carvey, set my Sam Bankman-Fried freed.
No, I don't agree with that because of the damage that he's actually caused a lot of reputational damage to anybody who's associated in this industry. He was supposed to have another trial in March, and the prosecutors were like, "Yeah, we're just not going to do that. Like, we had such a slam dunk in the first trial, it's not even going to be worth our time to bring additional charges." That tells you he's already probably going to, spend a lot of time.
That's also a new romantic way to deal with prosecutions and crime. We're like, he just committed so many crimes. We're just going to let him go and not bother prosecuting them, which, as a
Yeah.
justice-based person, I find kind of offensive. Yeah.
Well, the amount of resources that they would have to put into putting it through another trial it's I think the point is moot. And I've said this to people. I think we could see two different SPFs in the future. We could see a guy who spends a lot of time around other criminals and just continues the narcissistic behavior and blames other people. Or we could see a benevolent SPF that actually goes into the correctional system and actually helps people because he's such an intelligent guy. You just don't know whether he's just going to continue being full psychopath or if he's going to actually like turn a page at some point and realize, hey, this was like youthful indulgence and I was way in over my head and I didn't know what I was doing. And particularly, I just remember in the trial, it felt like he was just trying to blame a lot of other people when, the buck should have stopped with him.
Ah, you're truly a romantic. What a beautiful vision. SPF, anointed in prison, taken up to heaven. I think they could do a film with two versions of SPF, like that movie Sliding Doors, where one of them is like evil and running the gangs in the prison, and the other one is all gentrified, godified, and nice, like you're saying, deified, similar to maybe Ross Ulbricht, who they say is
You could
very
totally
nice
see
in
the
prison.
guy. You could see the guy either running a gang or rebuilding the library, reorganizing it, making it more efficient, or
And
doing
again, I love
that.
the movie idea. We just cut back and forth. It's like in one of them, he's pushing the library cart, and he's all quiet and nice. In the other one, he's like Gangsta Sam. Sounds
Sliding
fun,
doors.
man.
You need to
Sounds
get a
fun.
screenwriter on that.
Sliding
That's
doors
not a
too.
bad idea.
That's
He's
right.
already-
I want an executive producer credit. Dan, Eve, what do you think? Should we just let it go? The money came back, no foul.
He's already trading. He's trading fish, right? So he's already becoming a little gangster inside. He's knowing
He's trading the max, the mackerel, the
yeah, maybe they've
mackerel.
got like mackerel forward, forwards, all sorts of trading.
I think you could do a fractional mackerel thing. I'll give you some mackerel now and you get some later and, inflate the market that way.
Yeah.
Isn't that what an NFT is?
It's a mackerel reserve. That's an MFT. MFT. Go ahead, Dan. You're still on. Something about the guy in prison.
Oh no, that was just it. That was it. He's trading he's got his prison mackerel and he's trading those. So we'll see how he does.
Well, remember that it's fun to beat a dead horse, and that's the reason that you beat it. It was a trick question. The answer is no. He doesn't get out of jail, even if there is allegedly no harm, even repaying people at $20,000 a coin. No, 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 no. And maybe they should jail the people who helped him do it as well instead of just letting them go. But that's a different issue. Moving on to issue 4. A Texas town's misery underscores the impact of Bitcoin mines across the US. It's not just the power usage, it's the noise. They can't go outside and not hear the fans. All of their liberty has been destroyed by a corporation. Meanwhile, Bitcoin miners in the United States consume up to 2.3 of the nation's electricity. All right. As much electricity as the entire state of Utah. I think we could do better. Daniel Kari, what do you think about Bitcoin mining and messing with Texas?
Yeah, this is really interesting because I had been thinking about this since there was the article that came out about, I believe it's called the EIA, where they're going to start trying to monitor. They want to know actually how much electricity use from the US electrical grid is being used for Bitcoin mining. And after I read that, I started thinking, well, technically, Bitcoin is a commodity in the United States, regulated by the Commodities and Futures Trading Commission. We have a lot of information about how gold is produced, which is the most popular commodity. We have a lot of understanding of the supply of gold, the mining of gold, the use of gold. I would argue that as what is going to become with ETFs, a very big commodity, that we need to have more data about what's going on with Bitcoin. Um, I don't particularly have a problem with mining, but like if we're like using excessive amounts of electricity, we should figure out a way to make it efficient, right? Like doesn't mean we have to go to proof of stake or some radical idea, but like how can we make sure that we're using renewable energy or I used to actually work at an energy company, so like there's a period of time during the day where the generators, they don't really even have anything to give demand to, right? Like during the day, people aren't really using electricity demand in their homes. It's like from the 3 to 8 window. So how do we find a way to like efficiently use our energy to do things like mining Bitcoin, or you could even talk about like AI or even like larger data centers and things like that. That because that business is not getting smaller. I was reading about BlackRock now is building a data center, right? So like the data center electricity usage for our advanced economy is increasing. I think a question is like, how do we make this efficient, and how do we have transparent data around this? Again, I feel like with gold, we have a lot of transparent data about that commodity. If Bitcoin is this commodity as regulated, through the United States at least, like where's all the data that we need? The one thing I noticed about like proponents of Bitcoin were saying about this electricity usage monitoring is like it's Orwellian. Well, if it's Orwellian and it's a commodity, though, I would argue we should have more data and transparency around mining.
I agree. Tracking a business is not exactly Orwellian. It's what the government does. Businesses generally abuse the rules, go right up to the rules, go over the rules, and that's why we track them and then we punish them. Daniel has an incredibly idea for a measured approach, but we all know what Congress is going to do: ban it, ban it. Josh Shigala, what do you think about Bitcoin mining? Takes as much power as Utah now. Utah.
Utah, yeah, right. Um, well, if you look at the largest data centers in the world, because the article mainly is about the noise, right? But these data centers, the Equinix ones and such, vast, 1.5 million square feet of space being used. And they've just sort of like, I don't hear anyone complaining about the noise of these giant data centers. So either they're doing something better with their fan and heat sinks or something else. But I don't know, like why, I mean, there are already laws around noise and around, noise pollution. So it seems like a weird hit piece or someone just trying to write something that kind of, will a new angle, like find me a new angle on this Bitcoin thing, the boss says. So the writer's like, oh, noise. Yeah, that's a good one. Because there's obviously ways of making these things have less noise, better insulation and I don't know,
No, I
water
mean
cooling.
you hit it on the head, right? Like a journalist is going to love to write something about Bitcoin is noisy.
Yeah,
It's noisy. It's a noisy technology, right? I
very
mean, I know
noisy.
this is a journalist. Like, I hate to say it. Like, if my editor was like, "Hey, can you write this story about Bitcoin being noisy?" I'd be like, "Yeah, sure. I'd love to do that."
Yeah, right. So I don't know how much to give to the lead. Obviously, there are a lot of cases where farmers and such get headaches from the large windmills because the tips are going at supersonic speeds, causing these certain vibrations, and it can cause things. But yeah, I mean, you just insulate better. I mean, the better you can, the less noise you get. Also, guys, the less noise you get, the more efficiency you have. So the more efficiency you have, the higher profits you have. So it's in the you're incentivized as a miner to remove noise, to have less heat, and all sorts of things. So I just don't see, all these arguments for Bitcoin having this wasteful side to it is nonsense, because it's in the interest of the miner to have as much efficiency as possible. And so having excess noise is an inefficiency. Get rid of it.
Well, and one of the original ideas was to build the Bitcoin miner somewhere cold like Greenland, where the air is already cool. You can scrub it, you can bring it in, you don't have to cool it. But I think what's happened here is that Texas is for taxes, and that there's certain advantages to building a business there. There might even be subsidies and other things. So as an environmental idea, cold air doesn't matter as much as a nice regulatory environment. Dan, Eve, what do you think about Bitcoin using more power than Utah?
Well, it's a bit dubious about like the health stuff that's coming out. It seems like one of the only places where there's reports of like the residents have got I mean vomiting nosebleeds. How can like a whirring of a fan from a distance cause a nosebleed? It kind of seems to me like this is
For all we know, it could be that kid from the Twilight Zone. Have they checked that yet? They need to check. It's like a horror movie out there.
Or Stranger Things,
Yeah, the birds falling out of the sky and all sorts. But this is the only report we've ever heard that's been like this, and it seems very akin to like the early days of. I remember was it in the 90s when people were saying like the power lines cause it's the sort of the paranoia around power lines, right? We had that in the UK. It was like power lines. I can hear the power line buzzing, and like you got people putting tinfoil all over their house because they were saying that the power line like suddenly, and it seems like it's that sort of thing, right? It's this morphing of like they heard Bitcoin, they don't like Bitcoin, they've read it from these crazy ridiculous articles that Bitcoin boils the ocean and it's the only bad industry. It seems to be the only industry ever where we continuously compare the Bitcoin energy consumption to a country's power. I mean, there's no other industry on earth where they do that. They don't every 5 minutes go, well, PlayStations use as much as, I don't know, Krakatoa or whatever. Or Krakatoa is a volcano or something, isn't it? But you know what I mean? They pick a random place like and just say Timbuktu, and so it was using more power than Timbuktu now. We need to do something. But ultimately, as Josh was saying, these miners run. They need to run efficiently, and obviously there's going to be noise associated with that, and with if they're making too much noise, they're not running as efficient as they could. So it's all part of the process to actually eke out as much efficiency as possible. I mean, the article, the problem is it's from Time, and I know Time do some good stuff, but I'm going to bring it up. They did say that Hitler was Person of the Year in 1938, so they may not be on the ball about some of their research. just a tad.
Well, to be fair, Person of the Year is not necessarily good Person of the Year. It's more of an influential title. Stalin was also Person of the Year.
Oh, okay. That meant
you were also Person of the Year once.
You,
because of
we're all
media.
little Lebowski urban retrievers, and proud we are of all of them.
But it's the constant stuff like the Bitcoin mining is essentially a lifeline for fossil fuels, and that's just such a misguided statement with all the research out there right now. I mean, you've got to make that particular statement, knowing about the renewable situation, about how excess energy is the cheapest. It's just really silly. It just makes it invalidates the rest of the argument. Then there's the other stuff like those impacts include carbon and noise pollution. So again. The carbon pollution doesn't come, and the articles are really wishy-washy around this. Bitcoin miners are their computers. They don't have a direct carbon pollution footprint. The electricity they may use may be carbon-based, but just the same as an electric car would use carbon. I mean, some of the charging stations and whatever are renewables, but they use the same amount of carbon or emit the same amount of carbon as a toaster, and a toaster doesn't emit, or it probably actually does, actually, because you're burning. Okay, forget about the toaster example, but you know what I mean, right? It's just picking on something and saying, well, it produces all this carbon, but then every other appliance in your house uses electricity, which ultimately produces carbon. So yeah, it's just another whiffle waffle article, getting crazier now because they're going on about how it's all of these health impacts of, and again, data centers, right? Data centers growing like no tomorrow. Who's to say that you storing your crappy photos on Dropbox is any more important and negates any form of critique about how that data is stored, with a normal data center? Why do your photos on Dropbox take precedence over mining, a Bitcoin mining situation? Because one thing you never hear about is how a data center has to shut down to give power back to the grid, because they don't bother doing that. They just literally carry on working and not giving energy back to the grid. So at least there's that kind of part of the process, especially in the Texan energy markets.
Well, Dan, that my Instagram photos are more important than your international monetary network. That's just the way it is. And it's a good point about electric cars. They can be full of dirty electricity got from coal, or it can be clean electricity got from solar. The same thing for Bitcoin miners. We can't judge the electricity. We have to judge where it came from. One of the aspects I liked about this story is making fun of Texas and giving them a hard time, because this does seem like kind of a Karen situation where they're waving that San Francisco flag and saying, not in my backyard. Don't put those miners up in my backyard in Texas. And we all know that birds aren't real. It's been proven they charge on power lines. Moving on to issue 5. Tesla missed $500 million in Bitcoin gains. Will it sell the remaining 9,700 Bitcoin? As predicted on this show, they did do an article telling you how much money Tesla made or lost from holding their Bitcoin, and they could have made a lot more. As well, Samson Mao has predicted that the price of Bitcoin will rise to $1 million. And if that's not enough, Kathy Ark says it's going to hit $2.3 million. Josh Shigala, what do you think about the price of Bitcoin, these amazing predictions, and of course, Tesla still holding just a little bit?
I just want everybody to quote me saying $1 trillion. These people just pull these numbers out. 1 million's been a number that's been pulled out for years. I don't know why they're chucking Samson Mao on the cover now. Anyway, look, these numbers, they make no sense, because what you've got to think is, how much money are they going to be printing? Because actually what you're saying with $1 million is they've just printed the hell out of the economy, and that's now why Bitcoin is worth that much. Eventually, it's about that. Obviously, more Chinese come in, more people want to buy it, more every economy around the world that is slowly inflating away their value will want to have some sort of safe haven. So, there is that. But at the same time, it's kind of a reflection of how much everybody's printing. And so, it just, these numbers, I don't know. Like, what, will it reach 1 million and then just stop? Is that what happens? It's reached 1 million now. It's stopping there. Like, these numbers are dumb. Just stop it.
I do agree, Josh. This is kind of the decline of good articles. So many times you'll be reading an article and they say, someone says, and then it turns out they just put up a quote on Twitter. And it's just this Twitter post. And then they'll do these talking to the crowd audiences where they really go out and do some research. And they quote 5 or 10 Twitter accounts in a row. And there's not even an article there. And I'm like, what happened? What happened to the article? Dan Eve, what do you think? Samson Mao says 1 million. Kathy Wood, 2.3. And of course, Tesla made some profits.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, who wouldn't like to see a $1 million Bitcoin plus? But yeah, those predictions, they're run of the mill now, right? And that's, they're all nothing compared to to the one that Ben informed us of, which was like the 666 billion, or I can't even remember. It had so many numbers in it. You know, you lose count. It was something like 12 zeros, more than that, right?
I think it was at least $666 billion per coin, but there was a lot more digits to it.
Yeah, that's the sort of prediction we need, right? Because these 1 million predictions are just nothing now. But yeah, we're always going to be looking back, just like how in your own life you'll turn around and go, well, you know, I wish I didn't use Bitcoin then, and you know, and I sold out for X amount, and I could have had this much. And we're going to be doing that with companies until the end of time. You know, think about it in 20 years' time when they're saying, oh, Tesla missed out, that Bitcoin that they sold will be worth $2.3 trillion now. You know, we're going to be hearing about this for time immortal. And like, you know, even the ones like when was it Lily Allen who rejected 8,000 Bitcoin for to do a gig, you know, in 2014, 2015. So something ridiculous like that. These stories are going to just eke out the woodwork, and they're going to overtake. They'll be like the Bitcoin peak today, right? They'll be like the Tesla lost out on, you know, 9,000 Bitcoin day because they sold out early. But it's sad, right? It sounded like Tesla were rallying around Bitcoin, and then obviously Musk had bought into the FUD around the environmental stuff, and then, you know, things have turned around. BlackRock now have an ETF, and all the most of the information on the mainstream is starting to actually sway around to Bitcoin being environmentally friendly. So who knows where we'll be in a few years' time.
I do think we're lucky so far, Dan, that they are sticking to companies and they aren't writing these articles personally. So it doesn't say, on March 15th, 2015, Mad Bitcoins bought himself lunch. That lunch could have been worth 3 houses now. And then that kind of thing. I don't want that to be happening. Daniel Kari, what do you think about the price predictions? $1 million, $2 million, and of course Tesla still has a little left.
Well, the big prediction, it seemed like at the beginning of the year, was we were going to have $100,000 Bitcoin. And I think that was like an expectation for this year. I bring that up because we're talking about $1 million, we're talking about 2.3 million. What are the timelines for this? Because a good point was made about the inflation of actual hard money, as I guess you would call it, like cash money. So if Bitcoin is worth 1 million in 10 years, what does that mean for the, you know, 5, 6, 7% inflation that happens every year to cash, right? Like, that's an interesting dynamic that I hadn't thought of, that another panelist had. To answer the question why we have so much like prediction price stuff, and I can just tell you from experience is, you know, as someone who's worked at CoinDesk and has worked in the media, as it pertains to price, that is the most important story that readers want to read. That is just the data that is out there, is that the number one thing when people are looking for crypto is they want to know about price. One thing that has happened this year, that editorially that has happened with CoinDesk is, I don't know if, I'm sure you guys are aware that Digital Currency Group no longer owns CoinDesk. And at the beginning of this year, they made a market change where they don't talk about Web3, they don't talk about NFTs, they only talk about price, because the new owners are Wall Street and they understand what they understand what people want to read. So what's getting pumped out in the media, it's all about the markets and it's all about price. I'm not a fan of it because I think there's other things that we could be talking about, but this is what people want to read. While we were kind of discussing this topic, I started thinking, okay, wait a minute, why did Tesla sell their Bitcoin? And so Elon, I'm quoting Elon here, the reason why we sold a bunch of our Bitcoin holdings was that uncertainty as to whether the COVID lockdowns in China would alleviate. That was in the summer of 2022. So I suspect that Tesla actually wanted to get back into cash, given that they had a factory in Shanghai, that probably there was some uncertainty about this huge capital expenditure that they had sitting in China that they didn't know what they were going to be able to do with. You don't see this with a micro strategy, right? Where they actually want to be in Bitcoin because they don't want to be in cash, because they're going to hold it for a long time. Elon's not doing that, right? Elon needed money. He had to get out of Bitcoin. Happens to us all sometimes. Got to pay the bills. So they're never going to think about it as, oh, like we lost $1 trillion or whatever in 10 years. They probably needed that cash for some emergency situation, because I think that Shanghai factory is actually running now, but like it was not in a good position, I think, like when nobody knew what was going to happen with those COVID lockdowns in China.
Also, another thing that I think might be at play here, might be, I'm not, don't quote me on this, everyone, but is that Tesla, I think, gets a good amount of carbon credits that they then sell to SpaceX, so that the SpaceX flights can be cheaper. And by having a lot of Bitcoin because of the mean green machine, that they might be reducing the amount of carbon credits they get for the ECG scores, because they're holding Bitcoin, which per transaction is XYZ amount of carbon. I don't know, but that might be something to play with why they sold as well, so they can, I don't know.
I want to go back to what Daniel said about the sale of CoinDesk. It is incredibly unfortunate if they are going that direction with the articles. I do enjoy kind of the mixture of price and then having a couple scientific articles or forward-looking articles or opinion pieces. Just kind of mixture.
I can absolutely tell you, based on, you can go look at the job postings they have out. You can look at the mix of articles that they have out. They are totally focusing on markets. They're going to get into an indices and data business similar to Bloomberg, but for crypto. I can tell you from experience that CoinDesk has never been profitable. So this is the direction that they actually have to go into, because you just look at all the layoffs in media. Media doesn't make money, man. You got to have some other kind of business. That's why Mike Bloomberg was really smart about Bloomberg Business Week and having that media arm, and then selling those Bloomberg stations to traders, which is like, they make a ton of money off of that. And I believe that that's the direction that CoinDesk is going in with the new ownership.
That makes sense.
I don't disagree. I do think you're right, and they're probably right to do it. It's probably where the market is. All of the other articles, all of the, Bitcoiner, cypherpunk, libertarian ideals, probably not helping. Going straight for the price is probably going to pay off better. Josh, you have more on this? Go ahead, Daniel.
Just one more thing to add is that Michael Casey, who's the chief content officer there, he usually does an op-ed maybe once or twice, 3 times a month. And it used to be all about the digital dollar and the promise of access. And he wrote a book about Argentina, which got him into crypto. And I met him very early on. You look at what he's written this year, it's about Bitcoin ETFs.
Yeah.
Josh Agala, do you have more on this topic? Go ahead.
No, I've forgotten what I was going to say, but yeah, it was about the terminals and yeah, that's right. Coin market cap, for instance, has turned into a paid for, like, to try and submit a coin now, you have to pay quite a lot of money to get submitted. So I think a lot of these info, I think it makes a lot of sense for CoinDesk to actually head towards that terminal data feed thing. I think it makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I mean, the rise of AI in publishing as well is a bit nasty, because some of those articles are just awful, and more and more people are using them because they're so cheap to produce, but they're just awful to read, and they're always the same. In conclusion, like, I just always know when something's been written by AI because it's the same format. And yeah, I mean, maybe it'll get better.
The in conclusion thing drives me nuts, because you don't need to tell somebody you're going to conclude it. You just conclude it, right? Only AI would do that, or like a fifth grader writing their first paper, and then it gets corrected, and then they don't do that again.
Oh, so glad to hear it from a professional writer, because it just drives me nuts. In conclusion, I'm going, oh yeah, AI. And I basically nowadays, I scroll down to the bottom. If it says in conclusion, I just leave it. I don't bother reading it.
Well, and what I can't stand now is they have the headline with like a question and you don't know who the person is. I skip the first two paragraphs, go to the third or fourth paragraph, so they can just tell me the answer. Like they're trying to bury the answer in the article. I'm like, no, I just want to know, who is the actor who, ran across 3 tennis courts naked. I'm like, I want to know who the actor is. But it's like, so and so has been in so many films, blah 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 blah. And by the time you get to the third paragraph, it's like the actor's name, the only information I wanted. So yeah, articles are getting worse. And as Daniel mentioned, I don't want to play it because they'll get all mad at us, but there was a great Saturday Night Live sketch in 1978. This is Dan Aykroyd playing Jimmy Carter, and he's talking about, in the future, it's going to be great because Americans will be paid $1 million a piece, but $1 million will buy a cheeseburger. And, it's just going to be amazing. Everyone will make $568,000. Every American will be a millionaire. So I don't want to.
This was in 78 at the height of what was called stagflation, right? It was similar to what we just went through, and it's what got Reagan elected. I'm glad you told me that was Carter, because I wouldn't have known. Dan Aykroyd doesn't look anything like Jimmy Carter.
They on Saturday Night Live, they have a thing, they don't really dress him up, at least back in the day, as much with the prosthetics. They're just like, I always say it's Carter, it's Carter. But yeah, beautiful bit, as he was just saying, he's like, wouldn't you like to own a $4,000 suit? Everyone would like that. It would be amazing. But yeah,
but then everybody would have a $4,000 suit. So then it's just like having a $400 suit. It's just that there's another zero.
Yeah. It reminds me a lot of, I remember a BitConnect like a big stadium event, seeing a clip of that, and the woman there was like, and the good news is we're about to give everybody another, double the amount that they've got. And everyone's like, yes, we're all getting double the amount. And it's like, hang on, what? It's just so dumb. It's so dumb.
It's like that great Shel Silverstein poem where he's like, I'll trade you a quarter for 2 dimes. And of course I did it, because 2 is more than 1. And it just keeps going down and down and getting worse and worse. But we're running out of time. We got
that for crypto. Somebody should start with FTT, or the bottom should be FTT. It starts with Bitcoin, and then it goes all the way down to FTT, or whatever you want to call beanie babies these days.
It's definitely there in the poem. The structure is good. You start out and you're like, oh, I had 1 Bitcoin, but I traded it for 2 Litecoin because 2 is more than 1. I'm not a sucker, But it's a beautiful poem. But we got to keep moving here. We do have a bit of positive news from Andrew on Twitter at AP_abacus. He writes, update, the Bitcoin halving is in 74 days. Bitcoin ETFs are the most successful ETFs launched in over a decade based upon both daily and total volumes and inflows. Expecting Bitcoin greater than 50,000 before the halving or after the halving. Expecting BlackRock Bitcoin assets under management greater than $5 billion by the year end, and expecting Schwab and additional Bitcoin ETFs to launch. So it's nothing but good news. And now the bonus issue. RazzleCon. Amazon is turning the $4 billion Bitfinex Bitcoin heist into a feature film. And there's a great story on CNBC if you want to watch to get more detail on RazzleCon, the Bitfinex hack. They had a lot of videos I hadn't seen before and a lot of information that I wanted to know that CNBC did a great job reporting on here. Crocodile of Wall Street and the battle over billions in stolen Bitcoin. But now, Dan Eve, I want you to know, do you have rapper envy at RazzleCon, the famous rapper? It almost seemed like they lived their lives knowing that this would happen one day, but now there's going to be a movie.
Yeah, we still haven't found out whether how they actually hacked. Right? Was it Liechtenstein? Was he some sort of a genius hacker, or did he kind of find a vulnerability and just kept on pressing withdraw and it was just pinging him out all this Bitcoin? Right? How did they do it? That trial is going to be quite interesting to see how they, from a technical perspective, how they managed to funnel the money. But imagine just being in this situation and sitting on, what was millions turning into billions of dollars and not really knowing what to do with it other than buy a few PlayStations with vouchers. It just seems really, what a crazy scenario that they managed to find themselves into. Like two of these unlikely kind of, not heroes, but heroes in a hacking sort of side of things. But it seems to be all the rage right now, all these crypto-based documentaries. And maybe that's because there's so many completely outrageous scandals in crypto that you could just, you could pretty much write a documentary off of and essentially any ICO that's happened, from all of the drama from every single cryptocurrency you've heard of, from Ripple to Ethereum. And we're just going to see us, again, a plethora of these coming, especially as we've seen earlier, more heists that happened early on in Bitcoin's life. Bitcoin's recovered from those, and we'll see more of these documentaries coming out of the woodwork. But I'll be watching it. I still haven't watched the other ones yet, Bitcon and the Richard Hart one. I really want to see the Richard Hart one because that guy's just crazy. But yeah, I'll be watching the Razzle Khan one.
The Richard Hart one is interesting because they don't really come down on one side or the other. They're still kind of undecided on it. Whereas Bitcon really does seem like a straight up con, and they are very interesting psychopaths. You can check that one out on Netflix. Also, shout out to David Silver, friend of the show, who got interviewed in the CNBC little documentary there. And I can't quite find it, Dan, but I do think the future of all these documentaries, and the best section, the most interesting graphics, is when they show the big chart and they say the money went here and the money went there and the money went to there. And that's what I always find the most interesting part. I can't find it right now, but Daniel Kari, what do you think about Razzle Khan and the millions pilfered from Bitfinex?
Yeah, so I've been doing this for a while, and I started out in 2013 as a journalist. So I've been asked to be in some of these documentaries, and I was involved in a documentary that was filmed about a year ago about Bitfinex and Razzlecon, because I was around CoinDesk at the time of the Bitfinex hack. I had been given like some information about it. I know that they had interviewed like Bitfinex executives. We filmed for an entire day in Las Vegas, me talking about everything that went on. I haven't talked to the producers in a long time, but there's going to be a lot of these kind of stories, particularly because Razzlecon, there's something that pops about that story. You don't hear much about the husband because he's just like a computer science guy. He's not that interesting. But the Razzlecon angle makes it all really interesting, because when you look back at it, and all the things that I've read about this, is like, it's obvious that like she knew she had done something really wrong, and that she needed to, she needed some kind of outlet. And that's what these like ridiculous videos were. And I remember, like, even before I participated in the documentary, I hadn't really seen the videos, and they showed me the videos and they filmed it. And I'm like, I remember saying something like, this is not good. This is like bad music. So I don't disagree with you that I think there's probably going to be more of these, but they're not all going to be good, right? Like there's a documentary or a movie. It has to have some kind of human or cultural element that makes that gives pop and life to people. And unfortunately, in crypto, like crypto isn't like a great cultural story. Because we still haven't gotten to that point where it's like something that has really helped out and then a lot of people use. So, it's always going to be about heists and bad news and like Bitcoin. And, there was an SBF documentary that came out, and I think that was CNBC maybe, or Bloomberg. It's freely available on YouTube, but I thought that was really well done. So some of them aren't great. Some of them are good. I was told that these producers that I worked with were like, they had done stuff before. So I went ahead and had done it. Probably had done some things that I probably shouldn't have done in the past. So I'm kind of choosy on these things now. And I'd like to make sure like I know what I'm talking about before I get involved. Bitfinex in particular, though, was one that I'd done a lot of stories on. So I felt pretty good about.
Yeah, any documentary that I ever talk to, they never make the film. So I always say the most brilliant and beautiful things, and it's just wonderful. And they thank me and they send me emails how great it was, and we enjoyed your contribution. And then they never make the film.
But
So
sometimes it just doesn't get sold. I think this one, I obviously signed some things, but like I haven't heard from them for a while. So it's like they actually have to sell it to somebody to actually like finalize, right? Like they can show either a streamer or a studio something, but if it's not like, if they don't see it right away, they're not going to buy it. That's the problem. So you could have been good, but you don't know who else that they interviewed, right? Like, you don't, maybe somebody wasn't wearing like a nice sports jacket, like you're, calling a baseball game,
They're not prepared. They haven't been studying Keith Olbermann like I have. They don't have the chops. But yeah, it is always bad. They never seem to make them. But this reminds me, we should have a shout out to Juan Galt, who becomes kind of the narrator and the star of the HBO documentary, The Anarchists, about the Anarchapulco Festival. If you guys haven't checked that out, check it out on HBO. But I
I'm
do
actually
think
surprised that he would narrate or do anything like that. That's
he's
interesting.
it's a great, it's a whole series. And they're interviewing him, but you know how a documentary is, there's always one guy who's like the voice of reason. They
Oh,
go
yeah.
back to him and they're like, oh, don't you think this is crazy? And he's like, yeah, it was crazy. And Juan
That's just
even has a,
confirmation bias, though. Oh, yes.
oh,
of course.
he even comes around to the end and he's kind of questioning libertarianism. I'm not going to give it too much away about the film. It's a great sensational story about Acapulco and all this stuff. But really, when there's a bad dude in your group, you kind of have to kick him out, even if you believe in the non-aggression policy and all these kind of things. Bad dudes can rule whole groups. But I love this Razzle Khan story. The husband. I disagree with Daniel. I think he's interesting because his nickname is Dutch and he's from Holland. Okay, that's not that interesting. It's really terrible.
You
I
didn't
still like
explain why
the-
that's interesting, though.
It's the opposite. It's the opposite of interesting. But I do love every video I've seen of them is hilarious with the interaction. The woman really wants to be famous on YouTube. The husband's like, I'll make brownies on YouTube, whatever. Just leave me alone. And it's clear he's tired of being hassled for to be on her channel. Josh Shigala, what do you think? Amazon's going to make a big movie. We're all going to watch it. Razzlecon, rapper hacker.
Well, I still, big shout out to Austin and Becky Craig for making a documentary about Bitcoin that wasn't about a big heist or something. This was Life on Bitcoin, released in 2014, made in like 2013, 2012. And like the big story behind that is this would have cost them probably over $1 billion in today's money. So probably the most expensive film made out there. And, they basically documented traveling around the world, just getting married and just spending Bitcoin back when it was almost impossible. And you had to convince every shop, no, take this. And, I think I was in that movie. I was interviewed for it. I don't know if I ended up on the cutting room floor. I'd have to check it out. But big shout out to those guys. Yeah.
I remember meeting a meetup. They were promoting that movie, and I may have written a story about this. I can't remember because it was so long ago. But the thing that they really wanted to emphasize to me is like how ridiculously hard it was actually to do what they did. Like they thought it was going, like I guess their concept of hard was not like we may not survive. Like I don't know how we're gonna we don't have any money to give anybody. Like.
Well, and now everyone does the I'm going to live on Bitcoin for a week article. And it generally goes really well and they don't push themselves. And it's been written 100 times now. But yeah, Austin and Becky were really interesting back in the day. And it's a horror show now.
Traveling, right? They were.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's not like they were sitting at home for a week, just like converting Bitcoin for DoorDash or something. Like, I don't remember now. It was so long ago, but I feel like they did like a road trip somewhere.
Yeah, they came to Berlin. I was living over there at the time, and it was a global tour. Yeah,
well, and it would be horrifying to people now. There's things like when Bitcoin was $1, they spent 30 Bitcoins on gasoline. Stuff like that happens in the film that will make you cry. But it is lovely, and they do go through some stresses and things. I can report to everybody, it is available now on Amazon Prime Video or Apple Video. A lot of these services, for the longest time, I know they had a hard time getting distribution, even though it just seems like you upload a file. In reality, it's a lot harder than that. So shout out to them for getting to that finish line, no matter how long it took them, of getting some kind of distribution for their film. But we're running out of time, so we're going to go to predictions or story of the week. Dan, Eve, are you ready? The prediction or story of the week. Go ahead.
Okay, what we're going to do? I don't have any. I don't have any predictions. Sadly, no. I'm all out of predictions and stories. There's been no pigeons that I've saved. There was a near pigeon event where it was just like there was just a white pigeon at the end of my driveway, and I walked. I opened the door and I looked at it, and it was just sat there, and I was like, another pigeon for me to save, and it looked at me, shat itself,
Save.
flew away. So unfortunately, no more pigeon ventures for me.
No more
Just imagine-
pigeons.
Fucking,
Birds are
yeah,
safe.
Dan opens the door, sees a pigeon, drops his pants. I don't know.
Oh, I'm so happy! Like I'm like I can save one finally, but no, they don't.
Ah,
I can't remember if I mentioned, but I forgot to bury Larry and left him at the back of the garden. And then when I got back from holiday, it was like feathers all over the lawn, and the cats had got him. And good job he was already dead, as it were.
Oh, wonderful. A horrible coda to the story. More information we didn't need. Daniel Kari, do you have a prediction or a story of the week? Hopefully not about dead pigeons.
So I didn't know that this was gonna be like part of the I was gonna need to predict something. So FYI, I don't know if you guys know this, but CoinDesk has a Telegram channel, and so everything that they publish, it's like a locked group, but you can see everything that they publish every day because I think their UI is not good anymore. This Telegram channel just gives me everything that they're doing. I'm thinking, just kind of looking at what's been published is like, I think we're going to hear a lot more about Bitcoin mining. Like, I think there's going to be more about this. It just seems like we're just starting a cycle, and just ahead of what's going to happen in 74 days with the halving. Like, I think Bitcoin mining is going to become a central story to that. What happens to the miners post halving? I mean, okay, of course, price is going to go up, right? But the supply that they're actually going to be mining is going to go down. So how does that affect them? How does that bring in more of this talk about energy? Again, like I didn't know you were going to put me on the spot like this. So like I guess we'll see if there's anything new to talk about next week.
More energy FUD. How exciting. And I do have a prediction as well. CoinDesk, Cointelegraph, Bitcoin Magazine will all not write about the 10th anniversary of the World Crypto Network. They won't write about the 10th anniversary of Mad Bitcoins, and they won't write about the 10th anniversary of the Bitcoin group. No, I don't write press releases. I tagged them on Twitter, and I tried not to be sarcastic. That's the best I can do, is I took the sarcasm down a notch. But yeah, they're not going to write about us. Josh Shigala, do you have a prediction or story of the week? Go ahead.
I think the Copa Craig Wright thing is going to be very fascinating. What I find interesting about that is that Meta have apparently taken their name off of it because they just wanted to, they wanted to settle maybe and just have the no copyright on Bitcoin and blockchains and things. So it would be really, but my prediction is that Craig this is the end of Craig, and we'll see that the judge just says, look, just sign that, mate, just sign it. No, it's enough with your mumbo jumbo and your technical spaghetti. Just sign it, and he won't be able to. So
no more puppets, no more puppet show. It can't be. My story of the week is I watched another one of the good movies that I've been saving. I'm trying to watch all the good movies now. This one was called Filmmaker, and it's a documentary, or Film Worker, sorry. It's a documentary about a guy, Leon Vitali, who pretty much gives up his acting career after the movie Barry Lyndon so that he can work with Stanley Kubrick. And he's pretty much Kubrick's right-hand man. He does all the extra work for him, checking the prints, getting the colors right, checking the lights, even acting in Eyes Wide Shut as the man in the red suit who controls everything. Leon Vitali, an incredible film worker, never really recognized, but pretty much Kubrick's backhand man, his second hands, and an incredible film. It's on Apple TV, something like that. It's like $10. But that's about it for this week. Thanks to everybody in the chat for giving us a thumbs up down below. Be sure to check out the World Crypto Network 10th anniversary special. We played some clips and tried to scroll through the archive, but it goes on forever. It's never ending. So we didn't make it through the complete scroll. But be sure to subscribe, put a comment down below, and hello to everybody in the chat. Until next time, bye bye.